was the timeline of when he committed suicide?
It was within the year after this happened.
And is there any stories of why he committed? Is it non-related to this event? This event caused so much trauma that he just didn't want to deal with it?
I don't know. It may be unrelated. I don't know.
Okay, maybe unrelated. Of the 4 board members that were against you, we just learned a little bit about Skakel. Can you tell us a little bit about the other 3?
Absolutely. And there should be some clips in this film to back up what I'm saying. As you know, I like to make factual statements. Matthew Tiramond was the number one orchestrator, the top guy. And you want to take you through a little bit of each of these guys. Matt Tiramond, I was on a boat in the Bahamas, Pat, about 8-9 years ago with a big supporter, big philanthropist. And he said to me, "You have to be aware of this man." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because this man is incredibly jealous of you, James, and he wants to be you. You need to get him off your board." Now, at the time, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, oh, what does that mean? He admires me? I didn't have any life experience to inform me what could happen to someone who wants to be you. But apparently people saying this guy was very envious. He wanted to be me or to have what I have, whatever that. We could talk about that. That's Matthew Tiramond, the guy who orchestrated everything. And there are some insane, pornographic, obscene messages he sent me. Now, Matthew Tiramond was soliciting the board members to put money into his companies, that he was his for-profit Wall Street. He worked on Wall Street. He has an economics degree from the University of Chicago. His father was a famous Polish anti-communist dissident. A lot of these guys had fathers who were wealthy and famous. So one theory is that they lived in the shadow of their fathers. We could talk more about him in a minute. There's George Skakel, who we've been talking about. There's a man named Joseph Barton. There's federal deposition clips of him in the film. Joe Barton said some pretty crazy things in his deposition. He said, "I'm not entitled to a private life." So these guys were publishing messages about my personal life with my girlfriend. There's a man named John Garvey who is about to be deposed. He hasn't yet been deposed. And then there's Steve Alembic, who committed suicide. Those are the board members.
Of the 4, how many of them have you had communication with since they fired you?
These guys have been obsessively posting and tweeting on X about me nonstop for the last 2 years. Crazy stuff, demonic stuff. You wouldn't even believe me unless I pulled it up on the screen.
One of the ones, which one was the one that kept texting? He said, "I love you. Listen, I feel so bad about what's going on." And then afterwards, "You're a motherfucker," all this stuff. So how often did that happen? Was that board members or were those employees?
You're referring to in the film, these are some of the employees. Now again, at Project Veritas, people don't realize when I came on your show, we had like 65, 70 employees. That's a lot of people. And you saw about 12 or so were acting in this demonic way. You're referring to a couple of the younger employees who were behaving like this. So they came in the boardroom. They said, "O'Keefe's a mean boss. He yelled at me one time. He's a power-drunk tyrant." And then a week later, they would send me an Instagram. "I'm so sorry. I feel horrible for what I did. I never should have done this." And then like a few months later, they're calling me, I can't even say it on the air, but horrible, expletive words on the DMs.
So now, are you at a point that because to us, when it happened, the first thing I said is, I don't know what Project Veritas is without O'Keefe. And I know they don't like to hear that. A lot of times people think, certain organizations can get the same kind of results without the face. Most companies can survive without a face. Most companies could. And you're like, "Oh my God, Apple will never make it without Steve Jobs." Apple goes from a $100 billion company when Steve Jobs dies. Tim Cook did a great job. It's a $3 trillion company. He 30x what Steve Jobs had, right? But this is a small nonprofit that, like when I said you're crazy enough to do stuff like this, the average person doesn't wake up saying, "Let me go expose Pfizer in the middle of all the shit that's going on. Let me go expose Acorn and have the guy I work with suddenly have a heart attack that nobody knows what's going on." And then Michael Cormier, who is the leading investor, I don't know what role he had, and then he all of a sudden dies, and they don't know what he died from.
They're saying arsenic poisoning in the L.A. coroner's office.
So the average person doesn't want to do your job. The average person just wants to consume the content you create. So Project Veritas, We saw one of the recent clips, and the most common question everybody asks is, wait a minute, why does it say Veritas and OMG, right? O'Keefe Media Group.
Right.
What was that all about?